Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
We made it to the end of 2020. Jim, I think that's perhaps the best accomplishment we can possibly point to this year. It's been quite a year. It's been quite a series here of our year-end awards. This is the sixth and final installment. Obviously, here on New Year's Eve, we are down to our final three awards, but in many ways, they are the more prestigious. Really, two awards. We have our Person of the Year and our Turncoat of the Year, and then we'll offer our predictions for 2021, which will hopefully be a much better year for many people than 2020 was. But, Jim, it's time for the biggest one, Person of the Year. Who's your choice?
So it is one of those odd situations where I've had to come up with, I had to look up to make sure I have the right way to pronounce the name of this person. The person's been in the news all year, and yet very often you haven't seen a lot of discussion about this person. It is Moncef Slaoui, the head of Operation Warp Speed. He is I believe, a Moroccan immigrant who is a classic American immigrant success story, worked for the pharmaceutical industry for lots of years and was selected early on in this pandemic to say, well, we got to figure out a way to get a vaccine as quickly as possible. He's not enormously high profile. He's done some interviews. He does a bunch of the Sunday shows and things like that. But you haven't seen him at the White House. He's not gotten all that involved in a lot of the political controversies in the pandemic. And kind of in relation to this, actually, I'm going to go for a twofer. Gustav Parna, who's the military official who's heading up the logistics of distributing the vaccine. Two guys who probably, when the book is written on the story of this pandemic and how it was beaten, these two leaders are going to be a very key part of this story and probably deserve more attention than they have gotten so far this year. Again, they don't pound the table. They're not wild and lively personalities. I think it was really significant to me a couple of weeks ago when Gustav Parna, there were issues about getting enough doses of the vaccine to various states, and Gustav Parna stood up and said, that's my fault. We haven't done that as well as we should have. It's human error. And, that's something that's been sorely lacking in leadership throughout 2020. So good job, Mr. Slaoui. Good job, Mr. Parna. We are in your debt, and in a very dark year, you will be remembered as leaders who helped get us through one of the great challenges of our time.
Excellent choice, Jim, not only because he was at the tip of the spear for as you pointed out, the best idea of 2020, but one of the most amazingly successful operations in an emergency we've ever seen. Probably, at least on the medical front, the greatest we've ever seen in human history. And so excellent choices all the way around. And the fact that they're not household names makes it an even better selection. I'm going to go through a couple of honorable mentions. First, on the purely political side, I was going to pick Jim Clyburn because Joe Biden was essentially floating face down in the water after 3 states. And I think he probably would have won South Carolina anyway, but I don't think he would have won by the margin that he did without Jim Clyburn rallying to his side. And that really set the tone for all the other non-Bernie candidates to get out of the race and rally behind him with a sidekick of Elizabeth Warren, who kneecapped Mike Bloomberg and then stayed in the race just long enough to damage Bernie on Super Tuesday. But if you think I'm going to name Elizabeth Warren my person of the year, you got a lot of things coming. All right. The proper answer for me is probably just doctors and nurses in general for their tireless response to the pandemic this year. But we like to put an actual face on this, and it's actually not going to be an American. It's the person who got into a lot of trouble and ultimately died as a result of his efforts to tell the world about COVID-19. It's Dr. Li Wenliang. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm probably not. But he was a doctor in Wuhan. He's an ophthalmologist, actually. Found out about this disease that was going around. Didn't think that the proper information was getting out there, so he made it his mission to get it out there. As we talked about last week, the Chinese don't like that when you get information out that they don't want to get out. He was roundly condemned. Ultimately, he ended up catching the virus. He died from the virus. But long before the Chinese or the World Health Organization admitted what was really going on with this virus, Dr. Li was out there telling what he had seen and the information that was coming into him, trying to tell the world what was really going on. And so because of the Chinese, we lost several weeks in terms of getting ready for this. But if we had listened to Dr. Li in the first place, who knows how many lives could have been saved. But he's my choice for Person of the Year.
Greg, that was also on my list. Yes, another underappreciated story of the past year.
Definitely. And so, again, 2 names most people, if you Asked them on the street, probably couldn't tell you who they were or what they did, but critically important for 2020. All right, Jim, let's dispatch with the warm fuzzies here, and let's go to Turncoat of the Year. What do you have?
So this is another one where it's not the most familiar name, or I should point out, maybe it's the most familiar first name, but not the most familiar second name. And 2020 was a big year for names that are difficult to pronounce. Dr. Tedros Adhanom, who is head of the World Health Organization, is my selection for the Turncoat of the Year, Greg, under the principle that the World Health Organization is supposed to be on our side against the virus, not the other way around. Perhaps I exaggerate slightly, but I think in the when we put together the long history, the story of 2020, first and foremost, is the story of the pandemic. And the story of the pandemic begins and is most consequential in China, despite the cost it has inflicted around the world. Because not only did it originate in China, that was our best shot of preventing this, global catastrophe. And a big part of the problem was the Chinese government not being honest about it, insisting it was not contagious from human being to human being, when in fact it was, when doctors on the ground knew it, when doctors on the ground were catching it from their patients. And the World Health Organization, this is where you can insert every "you had one job" meme and GIF that you like. The World Health Organization, this is what the World Health Organization is for. All of their other public health and awareness campaigns and all of that are all nice, but really stopping something like a global pandemic before it spreads too far is exactly what we would want to have the World Health Organization. And I think the fact that they've gotten active for all kinds of causes, including, by the way, abortion rights and other things that are not necessarily something that most people of us would define as being a natural topic of focus for world health. Seriously controversial topics and things like that. Look, everybody's anti-disease. Everybody's anti-virus. Everybody's anti-pandemic, or at least the World Health Organization is supposed to be. But when push came to shove and they had to, they trusted China when they should not. They trusted China when there was plenty of evidence not to do it. If you're the World Health Organization, you're not trying to look online to figure out what people are saying on the ground in China. You are derelict in your duties. Deeply frustrating. The Trump administration says they want to withdraw from the World Health Organization and stop funding it. The incoming Biden administration says they want to restore it. You'd like to think that someone in the Biden administration would look at the World Health Organization and say they didn't do their jobs. Doesn't necessarily mean we have to, cut every last bit of funding, but if we're going to give you any more funding, we need to see some reforms. We need to see this organization does more than just put on fancy conferences, because they have a job, they have duties, and this is exactly what it is. And they failed, they fumbled, and we are all living with the consequences of it. So Tedros Adhanom, head of the World Health Organization, is my nomination for Turncoat of the Year.
Excellent choice, and I have zero confidence in the Biden administration to actually do anything about it. I mean, when you talk about their attitude towards China, towards Iran, towards the EU, towards the Paris deal, I mean, everything they want to do is to go right back to the way it was before Trump got in office, and that means kowtowing to the World Health Organization as well. So while I'd love to see some actual accountability here, I don't think it's going to happen. It's part of that status quo ante as Joe Biden wants to go back to, and it's going to be maddening on a number of different levels, and that's going to be one of them. Jim, my honorable mention for this one goes to Nancy Pelosi for her let them eat ice cream sandwiches while we just hold up on COVID funding until after the election, because we definitely don't want the president to get a win on that. Don't know that would have made the difference in the election, but that's about as craven as it gets politically. And I know I just said with Person of the Year that I like to have a specific person, and in my actual choice, it's not going to be. But, China didn't just kill a lot of people this year. They killed Hong Kong, and very few people actually paid attention to it. They put in the tougher laws where protesting became a deeper crime. And not only did China renege on its promise to let Hong Kong live under its previous laws for many, many more years as part of the handover from the British from the late 90s, but the response from the world was very tepid. Some countries like Australia and I believe the UK did ultimately put some sanctions in place and take other measures to try and punish the Chinese, get them to change their mind. Obviously, it didn't. I thought the U.S., I know there's a lot of other things on the plate, but I thought the U.S. was very weak, at least publicly, in trying to beat back what China was doing to Hong Kong, to the freedom-loving people there. I mean, I think the protests of the people in Hong Kong in the face of Chinese oppression is one of the most inspiring things we've seen, and it should have been something that rallied the entire world to the cause. So for the Chinese and all the people around the world who know better, especially Western nations who could have done a whole lot more to browbeat China verbally and policy-wise, and to make statements and have gestures that show that you stand with the people of Hong Kong, the way Reagan did with the people of Poland with Solidarity and other people behind the Iron Curtain back in the 1980s. That made such a huge difference back then, and it could have made a huge difference now. I don't know if it would have changed it. China doesn't necessarily care what everybody else thinks. They just like to exercise power and have more people under their thumb. But the fact that it happened so quietly without more outrage from the international community, it's not only Red China, but nations, including Western nations, that did not stand up for the ideals of freedom and democracy the way they should have.
Another excellent selection there, Greg. There are times this year where it has felt like following the news, like drinking from a fire hose.
Yes.
And it's, easy for big, consequential actions to get lost in the shuffle. And the de facto takeover of Hong Kong, the eradication of whatever liberties it had, definitely sounds like one of those stories that we'll be dealing with ramifications of this for years to come, and it didn't get the attention it deserves, admittedly, because we had some other big issues on our plate.
Hey guys, it's Mock and Daisy from the Chicks on the Right, and we're excited to tell you about our podcast, the Mock and Daisy Common Sense Cast.
If you've been stressed lately with the information overload on social media, or just don't feel like anything in the news makes sense anymore, don't worry, because we're here to clear things up.
Every week, we discuss topics like cancel culture, national crisis, what's happening to our new generations, and if you're just plain tired of people trying to tell you what to do or how to live your life, we tackle that too.
Find out more by going to our website, chicksontheright.com, or start listening on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Don't forget to leave a comment or review and subscribe.
Jim, we both saw the pandemic coming, of course, at the end of last year. No, we didn't. But we still have predictions for 2021. We're obviously going to have a new president, and who knows what else lies ahead. What's your prediction for the new year?
It was funny. You asked me about a year ago, and I said the prediction was pain.
Pretty much, yeah.
Quoting Mr. T from the Rocky movies. And, I ended up being more accurate than I knew on that one. I think if you go back somewhere in like late January, as the pandemic was starting to spread out of China and into other countries, but really hadn't become much of an issue in the United States, I said, this pandemic could be the second most important news story of the year after the presidential election. And I think I only missed it by one, Greg. My prediction for 2021 is thankfully something better. I don't know exactly what it's going to be. I'm not thrilled with the incoming president, but I do feel like this has been almost a global. It's been a calamity. It's been a catastrophe. I don't know if it's necessarily been a near-death experience for all of us, but it's been a situation which it has touched the lives of everybody. We've been separated from our loved ones. We have been. Many people have lost their jobs. People have lost their businesses. People have been told to stay at homes. We've lost, as of this recording, we're well north of 300,000 people. That's like 100 times 9/11. That's the scale of this has been absolutely horrific. We have new hope because of the vaccines. As you're hearing this, people are, getting it shot into their arms. We're getting a little more protected each day. A good portion of Hunting for Horsemen, was trying to, in the early months of this pandemic, trying to imagine what the world was going to look like on the other side of this when the pandemic had ended. And I portrayed a world that was still kind of in a psychological hangover, still kind of dealing with the ramifications and trying to climb out with all the pain and suffering and everything we had lost during the pandemic. I think I might have gotten that part wrong because as I look forward to 2021, I actually feel a certain amount of optimism. We've been tested and we've gotten through this hopefully more or less okay, or hopefully you've come through this okay. And hopefully with a newfound appreciation for the things in our lives we were not allowed to enjoy, whether it was family gatherings or getting together for the holidays or going on vacation, museums, live sporting events, movie theaters, live performances, all these things that are part of things we enjoy in life were taken away from us for the better part of a year. We're going to get them back in 2021. Not all at once. It's probably going to be gradual. It's probably going to be slower than we like. But we're going to get back to something akin to normal life. And maybe we'll begin to realize, hey, normal life, even with its frustrations, the traffic jams, the work deadlines, the stress, kids' homework, school will come back next year. That's going to be delightful. And I say this on behalf of every working parent. We will come into we'll begin to appreciate the joys of normal life. And one of the things which kind of worth noting is, so far, We've seen a slow but steady climb out of the deep economic pit that was caused by the quarantines and the closures. There's going to be a lot of pent-up demand. A lot of people are going to want to go out on vacations that they weren't able to take and go out to the movies, go out to the theater, eat in bars and restaurants, all the things we haven't been able to do at all or have had to do under greatly reduced circumstances since roughly March of 2020. That could be a lot of pent-up economic activity, and that could be a lot of pent-up economic demand, and business could be booming as 2021 accelerates and life gets back to normal. So maybe we'll have a roaring economy. I didn't vote for Joe Biden. I think if Biden is smart, he would recognize America could really use some nice, calm, quiet, peace and prosperity. And if he can deliver, so that means no big tax increases. That means no sweeping changes. We don't need a socialist revolution right now. We just need our lives to get back to normal. If Biden is smart, he can pick up on that. We could be in a really nice place at the same time next year, Greg. The country could be enjoying peace and prosperity in a sense of enjoying the good times that we were denied because of this great ordeal of 2020. Or they'll probably screw it up, Greg. There's a decent shot of that, too.
You know, it's worth pointing out, we probably should have pointed this out at the beginning of the series, that Jim and I only know the categories. We never tell each other what our choices are for each category, which is why I mentioned, well, that was my first choice too sometimes, but here's another one just to kind of fill out the discussion a little bit more. We did not talk about our predictions. And it's going to be pretty obvious because I hope you like Jim's optimistic vision of what the next year might look like. Because here's my almost 180 approach to this. So I hope you're right, Jim. I hope your prediction's true and mine's not. But I expect the Biden administration to go pretty hard left, particularly after the first 100 days, and especially if the Democrats win the 2 Georgia Senate seats, which I have a sinking feeling they will, in some part due to the fact that you've got people like Lynn Wood and others saying that if you think that there was malfeasance in the presidential race, you need to not vote at all in the runoffs. I don't know how many people are going to listen to that. Hopefully it's not many, but the races are tight enough, and they certainly were on Election Day back in November, that just a sliver of a percentage of people buying into that could make a huge difference come Election Day. And if the Democrats control the Senate 50-50 plus Vice President Harris, you are going to see a litany of legislation coming down the pike that it's going to make your toes curl. There will be efforts to soak the rich in taxes. There will be a push, I guarantee you, for what they call the Equality Act, but what is really an inequality act for churches and for schools and anybody who doesn't toe the LGBT agenda. There's going to be efforts to put the taxpayers on the hook for student debt that was willingly taken out. There is going to be a lot of spending in a lot of areas that's going to blow the debt up even more. And I know Republicans have kind of lost the ability to take the moral high ground on the debt since they didn't mention it much over the past few years. But I don't think there's going to be much of a slowdown from the push leftward. Biden's going to couch it in fairly moderate language, but there's going to be an ocean of red ink added to the ocean we already have. If Democrats control the Senate, a lot of that's going to get done. If Republicans can hold on to one or both of those Senate seats, then it's going to be a little bit different. But that means Biden's going to have to do a lot of it by executive order because McConnell won't let it come to the floor. I don't think that the left, where it is right now, is going to stand by and let Biden just kind of be a caretaker. They're either going to push him loudly in that direction or just shove him with 2 hands in that direction. And I hope I'm wrong about that, Jim. But the left has gotten to the point where they really don't want to wait for anything anymore. They're not willing to compromise on much. And I fear that Biden and a lot of the lefties that he's bringing in with him are going to take what was dissatisfaction in the suburbs and inner cities for President Trump as a mandate for the leftist agenda, which it was not. And it's going to be ugly. So, again, I hope it's yours. I hope it's your vision for 2021.
This is why people enjoy the Three Martini Lunch, in that, you know, we appeal to your greatest hopes as well as your greatest fears, all often in the same segment.
On that note, Jim, it has been quite a year. We'll see you again on Monday. We're off tomorrow for New Year's Day, but here's really hoping that 2021 brings a whole lot better news for us as a nation, as well as individuals, and that just we're going to have a lot to celebrate and be thankful for 12 months from now. But I'm always thankful for being able to do this with you each day. So happy New Year to you and your family, and we'll reconvene again on Monday.
Greg, Happy New Year to you and yours. And yes, goodbye, 2020. You won't be missed.
It will not be missed. And thank you also, of course, to our wonderful listeners every day being with us on the Three Martini Lunch. We're very grateful for your faithful listening and your comments. We love engaging with you on social media and beyond, so please keep it up. Have a very happy new year, and we hope for only the best for you. Good health and prosperity in 2021 as well. You can certainly subscribe to the Three Martini Lunch. Please remember to give us a 5-star rating and a kind review. We're very grateful for that. Get us on those home devices. Just say play Three Martini Lunch podcast. Happy 2021. We'll see you Monday on the Three Martini Lunch.
Hi, it's Dana Lash, host of The Dana Show. Every day, I'm here to keep you up to speed on the most important stories and info that you need to know in your very busy life. And if you're always on the go and you want to stay connected, just download our daily podcast and take it with you. It's a great way to get up to speed on what you need to know and what legacy media may not be telling you. Visit danaradio.com and click on the podcast link or subscribe at iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.